One. Welcome to the Primal Show with Gary Collins over there in the gray sweater and myself, Heath Squier. And today's guest is Colette Nelson. I found out about her and what she is doing through Jason Poston. She is an excellent trainer and diabetes coach. Can you tell us a little more about what you do and what you're doing for your clients?
Yes, I finished my master's degree at NYU, and that kept me here. Anybody that knows me knows I'm obsessed with New York City. And after I finished my master's degree and became a registered dietitian, then I became a certified diabetes educator. So I actually had to sit through 1,000 hours with an endocrinologist and then sit for the board. So I like to consider myself a diabetes specialist on several accounts. One, obviously, that I can say that I have a CDE, but also I was diagnosed with type 1 at 9 years old. So I don't want to give away my age, but whatever. I've had diabetes for 31 years. So figure it out, everybody. And, you learn as a type 1 so much about your body that the doctors at one point in my life, I sat there probably like literally 12 years old, and they say, well, Colette, just up this insulin, down this insulin, do that, do this, diet, exercise, and the big thing was, make sure whenever you take your insulin, you always have to eat carbs. That is what I knew for most of my life. And I struggled with my weight, and I just got fatter. The more I exercised, because the doctor told me, Colette, you have to work out. So I actually did that. I was one of the people that was 14 years old and I got a special gym membership at a real gym. My mom talked to them and said she's, knows what she's doing. I became one of the youngest aerobics instructors at like 17 years old. And all I did, this sounds crazy. There was a point in my life I was teaching 21 spin classes and aerobics classes, but absolutely feeding the exercise. Can you guys relate? I was feeding the exercise, but taking a ton of insulin. I was at one point probably taking 60 to 75 units of insulin a day, and I was just getting fatter.
Yeah.
And I couldn't seem to get this piece of the puzzle together because it was just, I was obsessive compulsive, and I did everything I could to keep my blood sugars under control, but it just wasn't working.
Sure.
And then what I found was that this is through, I finished, then I said, I want to be a nutritionist. I actually wanted to go, I wanted to go to med school, and then I just got so obsessed with learning about nutrition and figuring out how is this going to help me. And I love medicine, but my focus was really on food. So once I got a clue, and I moved to New York, I finished my master's, and I was studying nutrition with an endocrinologist. And, not that he knew anything either, but we started a whole weight loss program. And then I started this whole thing with bodybuilding, and I started working with a bodybuilder that believed in the keto diet. So you guys all know this, right?
Awesome.
But it actually did. I played around with it. All right. I played around with the ideas of the keto diet. I didn't, as a nutritionist, I couldn't buy into this whole thing. I'm going to eat tons of butter, mayonnaise, tons of fatty red meat. And it just seems so unhealthy, just intuitively.
Sure.
So before the word paleo came through to be something that it is today, it was kind of like my twist of it. You know what I mean? Like I was like, okay, I believed in the Middle East kind of approach to eating. I knew that just following low carb, I lowered my insulin from back in the day. It was, so you remember 60, 75 units of insulin I was taking. I was dropping it down to 30. But today on a real the stricter I follow a paleo diet, and it is true because I love dairy, and that's been a huge thing just to after I get off of that, it's true. I will be on, and now this is with blood sugars ranging. I test my blood sugars 10 times a day. I have a medical necessity for 400 strips a month. So this isn't just me saying, oh yeah, my blood. No, this is testing my blood sugar. I'm testing 10 times a day. I'm awake 12 hours. I'm testing almost every hour, right? Keeping it between 70 and at the height, 130, okay?
That's awesome.
Taking only 12 to 15 units total a day.
Wow, that's great.
Is that incredible? Think about this. From doctors telling me, Colette, you have to eat carbs. And all I was doing is getting fatter, a bloated midsection, a big round head, and to now taking, when I'm especially competition, really, paleo to the grindstones, 10 to 12 units of insulin and perfection in my blood sugar.
So that's kind of like a paleo ketogenic kind of diet where you're really going low sugar, low carb, and that's where you see the real results, and you're able to really lower your insulin level.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Real quickly, could you explain, because I know a lot of people, especially in the paleo community, are confused between type 1 diabetes and type 2. To us, it's very, it's no-brainer to us. But the average person doesn't understand because type 2 diabetes is thrown around a lot, especially with metabolic syndrome, and people get confused and they don't understand the difference between the two.
It's one of those things that as a type 1, you kind of get, you kind of like shake somebody, no, this wasn't anything I did, because we look at type 2 diabetes
Exactly.
as a disease of lifestyle. Now, we do know that there's hereditary components, but really you often attribute it to, look, your age, ethnicities, but it's the obesity, it's the sedentary lifestyle. So with type 1, it's absolutely completely different in the etiology, okay? So this is an autoimmune disease. So what it is your body has these autoantibodies, GAD, insulin isotopes, all these things that are happening in your body. What the interesting thing is, and Gary, I don't know if you know this, but this was, because I'm obsessed with, the whole thing with diabetes. As of 2001 and 2009, they did an epidemiology study, and they found that type 1 diabetes has increased 23%. It is the only autoimmune disease.
No, I did not know that.
Is this crazy? It's blowing my mind, because we know that there has to be some type of environmental trigger that we don't know exactly what it is. We've speculated. Was it actually introducing cow's milk too early? Was it women, that didn't breastfeed their children? There's all these speculatory things. But the interesting thing was just recently when I was reading about this incredible rise, they found that if you give juice to children that have the antibodies. So I had the antibodies when I was born. I got it when I was 9, right? People get it when, now we're finding that type 2 as the disease of lifestyle, that actually 10% and up to 16% in places like Denmark and the Finland area, Greenland, they have a larger rise in population, which we are still trying to figure out. So there again has to be something environmental. 16%. Because it's called type 1.5. So we used to call it juvenile diabetes and adult. We don't do that anymore. We call type 1 and type 2, because I saw somebody that was 45, 39. They are type 1.5s. They're not type 2s. They're type 1.5s. They have the antibodies. They just didn't get triggered until later. So what they found is you give juice in the first year of life, that you get an earlier onset of type 1 diabetes should you be having those antibodies in your body. So it's something with this. I am telling you, again, you want to think about, what are we eating? What are these processed foods? I know you guys are so what are we eating? You think about it, it could have been sugar intake at such an early age. I'm not saying this is, believe me, this is all speculatory, but we're trying to figure out, why is there a 23% rise in type 1 diabetes? Why?
Well, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on, because we think everybody should kind of follow and mimic how diabetics eat and control it naturally, like a low carb, kind of paleo ketogenic template always. Because that way you're never going to have issues with blood sugar. You're going to be preventing diabetes in the first place. Even with my daughter, I have a 2-year-old girl, 2.5-year-old, and we cut her juice. Yeah, no, we cut her juice. It's honestly 5% juice and all water. It's so important because it's so filled with sugar, and at such a young age, I mean, it's no wonder why we have so many problems.
Well, we create addicts right out of the womb.
Yes.
I've seen this numerous times, and with people with young children, in order to kind of make them quiet or go, give them something busy to do, they give them juice cup. And I've watched young children literally go through 5-6 juice cups in a day. And there's 40 to 50 grams of sugar in some of those juices. You're literally giving your kid a toxic poison dump, because humans cannot process that much sugar, and it becomes toxic in the body. And I think that's one of the misnomers too, is the sugar industry has done such a great job that we don't understand that as humans, sugar is toxic to our body. Especially in a mainline form in table sugar, it is pure toxin. And
when you think about diabetes, right, and when you live in, it is 2014, and these doctors I literally spend, I'm in these offices, and I say, we have to promote a low carb way of life for these patients, because think about diabetes. We have it's in a disease where you have a problem metabolizing carbohydrates, right? So why are we going to pollute the system? These people already have dysregulated glucagon, because when your blood sugars are misaligned, right? Glucagon goes crazy, kicking out more sugar from the liver. So that's why they put people on metformin or glucophage, the first line of defense in any person with diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. We have to calm down that situation. So giving patients more, the concept just isn't so clear, you know? And I know that they're saying, Colette, you can't tell these patients. This is why, Heath, when I got in touch with you, I've been telling my patients about Julian bakery bread since I remember starting. I think I found it in, could it be wrong to say 2006? When did you guys come?
It's been a long time, yeah.
So
we've been around for 20 years, so.
Oh my God. Well, I just found it. And then when I found, I was like, listen, there is a way. And patients, well, you can't push this upon your patients. Well, you know, some of them I understand there's a price factor. I get that. I get the economics. I do. But so those that they said never would, I have changed their minds, and they're true. I mean, you don't even know.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to do was this year we actually went completely gluten-free. We're all of our products are GMO-free, and almost all of our products are low carb, because obviously I know that this is what works. If you're on a diet and you know you need to consume foods that keep you on track and combine it with real food, our products are the way to go. And we lab test everything so people can count on our nutritionals and macros, and that's why people like Jason are getting such great results. I mean, I just saw one of his pictures he took yesterday, and it was ridiculous. You know, and he's eating our paleo bread and chicken and avocado, and I mean, he is ripped. I mean, the guy looks great, and I think he's gonna win next week. So
it's gonna be when I was competing, okay, and I would eat paleo. I would eat the Julian bread. I would do all the, and people are like, there's no way, and I'm like, you can see how sick shape I was this year at 40 years old, type 1 diabetic, like. We feel like we've got this, you know, Jason said it, and we think we got the secret because, you know, people are sitting there suffering with diets, you know, and it just doesn't have to be that way. But bodybuilders are stuck in their heads are so stuck in this whole thing, I got to have carbs. And one of the things I absolutely hate, when you start working with me, you know, they know my whole scope of practice is insulin management, okay? Because I'm a diabetic. You don't have to be a diabetic to work with me, but it's got to be insulin management. It's managing that because you feel better. You're just more level-headed when you don't eat carbs, right? You feel more level-headed. You feel better. You have more energy. I mean, how about this? I did a bicep curl contest. You guys should look this up, right? I don't carb load. Everyone's like, did you carb load for this? No, because you know what carb loading is going to do for me? I got to max out my insulin. It's going to have crazy spikes. I'm going to feel like a rush. I'm totally up and down, right? No carb loading. I had a Quest bar. Okay, that was my carb loading. Just so you know, I eat straight the way I always eat. There was no change of scope where everybody says, "Oh, I had," you know. So I had a Quest bar, and that was about 90 minutes before, right? And I won. I did with a torn bicep a year earlier, 106 curls with a 60-pound bar, nonstop.
Wow,
yeah.
That's insane.
Carb load on. Nothing. I had a Quest bar. Well, what are those Quest bars? You know what I mean? Like, because I just think that there's the human body. I think you mentioned this too before, Gary. I became very fat adaptive. My body is able to utilize fat as a form of energy probably more efficiently than other people's are, you know? Yeah. So I'm not a carbohydrate burner, you know what I mean? I'm burning fat, you know? So my body everyone's always like, how do you have so much energy? You know, it's what I eat, you know?
Well, it's the public has been duped so much, and there's a lot of supposed low-carb experts out there who really look horrible. And you can tell they're doing it wrong, and they're not fat burners, even though they're claiming they're fat burners. And fat burning, as you know, as we all know, there's all systems going on. You know, I notice they always try and pinpoint that, oh, you're going to be ketogenic, you want to stay ketogenic all the time. Well, that's literally impossible for your body. It's shifting gears all the time, trying to figure out what's the best energy source for the task at hand. Do you need more brain glucose immediately at the time to maybe have more cognitive function, to focus? Well, then you're going to go into glycogen stores or readily available glucose in the bloodstream, and you're not going to probably be using ketones at that time. And we don't even know. That's the thing that I love, is the human body is a universe of speculation. We don't know. And to have these people who don't know their butt from a hole in the ground, to be honest with you, trying to pinpoint something and say that this is exactly how it works, I kind of cringe.
So do I. I sit in the gym all the time. I'm like, do you really know that?
Yeah.
what you're saying. I mean, there's been no documented 100%. It's absolute, you know? So
Yeah, and everyone's different, and I think it's dangerous, especially with people. They start talking to people with type 2 and type 1 diabetes, and I'm all, you got to be careful there. Those people, type 1 diabetics, have specific conditions that you're out of your realm, and they kind of get this following of type 1 diabetics, and you look at them and they've done it wrong. Exactly what you were talking about. You can see it in them, and they don't progress. They don't lose the weight. They lose like 20, 30, 50 pounds, and they think it's successful. But if you lose 50 pounds and you still weigh 275,
oh, right, how successful are you?
you're not successful. I mean, you're slightly healthier than you were before, but you're still going to die of the same conditions. That's not going to change because you haven't made the absolute change. And that's why I think it's really nice to meet someone like you who really gets it, because you have it and you've dealt with it for so long. And you did this crazy thing and you went out and educated yourself and got education in it. That's the problem I have too, is these guys are now, I'm sure you see this in the mainstream, me and Heath talk about this, is they don't think a standard education holds any merit anymore. If you go to college, if you go and get a certificate, if you go do something, that you are actually an idiot. You are a trained idiot now. And that's what they do. And then their whole thing is, oh, I didn't have to get any training. I just read some books and I went on the internet. I'm an expert. Oh, and by the way, I'm 150 pounds overweight. But listen to me.
I know.
You know, it's scary. So it's kind of refreshing to have someone like you explain it and know the biopathways and understanding how the body works to a sense in order to deal with it.
You know what's interesting? You mentioned working with an endocrinologist, and almost every endocrinologist I've ever met is skinny. Because guess what? They understand hormones. They understand the body. And it's great. It's like, why aren't these guys like our regular MDs? Because, you know, they're usually really fit. They're really into their bodies, and they understand hormones and levels and where they're supposed to be. And they understand you're supposed to get blood tests to see where your hormone levels are at. I mean, honestly, I love my endocrinologist. He's amazing, you know? And it's like, these are the guys that have the true keys. Like, they actually know what's actually going on in your body, and it's like they could help so many more people, but you have to get usually a referral just to talk to one. It's
and
so sad.
very few of them. Do you guys realize, like, I mean, I got to go to Staten Island today. There's only like 4 on the island. That there's this one guy he'd see 100 people a day. Because somebody, they're so undersold. I mean, well, they're just, I don't know what goes on in medical schools and how that whole intern he goes with an endocrinology, but there's not enough of them.
Yeah, there must be a lot of additional schooling, I'm assuming, to you know, be an endocrinologist. But I mean, can you talk to us a little bit about some of your clients and the results you've seen, obviously in lowering insulin, but just in terms of body transformation, in regards to changing, like, maybe what they were eating and what they're eating now, and the sort of body transformations you've been able to see in some of your clients?
You know, I got to tell you, the first challenge when I start working with, because I have a very specialty practice with type 1s, and is explaining to them that you have to understand that you need insulin no matter what. Our bodies do not make any insulin, okay? So that still protein will convert to glucose, and still even the fats, the glycerol, the fatty acid molecules will still cause an insulin spike. Not as readily, it's over time, okay? So we still need to manage the molecule of, you know, of injecting insulin or giving it through an infusion pump. And that's the first thing. Well, I don't, how can I eat the way you're telling me, Colette, when I have to take insulin? And so now it becomes a very big challenging moment, because we're used to carb counting. So we would think about, that's what we've been taught, is to carb count. So if you're looking at a plate and doctors tell you don't carb, this is, you know, they'll tell you on an insulin pump, because I do pump training, and I can't tell my patients this. I just have a young girl, 13 years old. I'm like, you still got to dose for vegetables, but much less, you see, and you still have to dose for your protein, but much less. So you're still going to need this insulin, but you'll find when you have the carbs, it's just a, you know, think about it. If you have a slice of bread, that's 3 units of insulin. So if 1 unit covers, say, 5 grams for this insulin-resistant patient, right? Because you're used to 1 to 10 or 1 to 15. So for the protein, you have to take, it's a little challenging. I got to teach them. So if it's, you know, if it's, say it's 20 grams of protein, half of that you can want to consider. Like Jason does about 30%. Like, you make it easy, half of it. So 10 grams of carbs you put in your pump, and then you still have to count the vegetables. But in a pump, you can do kind of dual wave and square wave, so the insulin gives it over time, not all at one bolus. So I got to start there. And then they're like, whoa, oh my God, I got to do. And then I got this one girl, she just, after she believes me, don't worry, you're not going to get low. In fact, because you're on a less total, think about this, you guys, when I was taking 60, 70 units, there's more insulin in my body. The chance of me going low is a lot more likely because it's like so much insulin all at once and the food's absorbing at different times and I'm crashing. It was all day long up and down. No wonder I was gaining weight, right? So as I lowered my insulin level, my total daily dose of insulin's lower, right? So I'm not taking it, no, there's not as much insulin in my body. If I get low, let's say I get low, it's 64, 60, you guys could be 64, 62. That's not horribly low blood sugar, you know? So you feel fine. You're easy to snap out of it. Your own body kind of has counter-regulatory. So I never really get crazy lows. I'm not ruining my life because of diabetes. So I explained to them, once you bring down your total daily dose with a low carb eating plan, your life is going to change. So I had this perfect example of this. She's like, fine, I'll believe. You would not believe just her pictures in, it was like maybe 4 or 5 weeks, right? Her midsection, she had this classic body, a diabetic body. What does it look like, you guys? An apple, right?
Yeah.
I felt so bad for kind of skinny, you know, up here. And then just this, you know, she's like 21 years old. I mean, you know, it's a classic scenario of insulinizing yourself, right? Her midsection dropped like 6, 7 inches. It was just, wow. It's almost unbelievable when I see her pictures. And that's where the weight just fell off. And she's like, she's like, I'm low carb for life. I just wish somebody had got me to push me to eat like this.
Well, and Heath, we no longer, we're kind of getting low carb is a misnomer too. It's actually right carb.
Right carb, I agree with you. No, and she's on the right, yeah. We're talking, she's got the Julian, I mean, she's on the plan, you know?
Yeah, because everyone gets confused with low carb because I think low carb's been stigmatized a little bit. And because people took it to extremes again in these groups, instead of eating a normal carb-rated diet, they went ultra low carb and basically took out all their carbs out for the most part, and then they get sick about a year later because now
it's totally not necessary. Where are your vegetables? Yeah. Where, you know, like yeah. I have them I'm not a big fruit person, but I do fruit after workouts. You know, that's kind of their treat. Yeah. And it just, that's exactly what it's not no carbs, like zero, you're just eating protein, it's a very balanced, the paleo way of life it's just a very balanced approach. It's
exactly, you know, and paleo's got tagged as kind of an extreme diet too, and I think it's because of the low carb community screwing it all up, to be honest with you. And the low carb people who have done extreme low carb for a long time, they screw up their thyroid, and they screw up also, they put so much stress on, you know, digesting fat, and they're bloated all the time, and, you know, just, it's unbelievable the stress they put on their body by ingesting that much fat. We had a talk with a couple doctors, Dr. Cordain and Dr. Smith, who did a lot of the original paleo diet research, and they talked about there's no animal on the planet that has over 50% fat to protein content, and yet these people are eating 75% of their diet in fats, and it's primarily saturated fat.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to your body? You know, what's going to happen to your body? Our body's never been exposed to that, so what they become, too, is they become extremely carb sensitive.
That's right. The minute they have a carb, it's like...
if they have a Quest bar, you know, something like that, or something that has a little more carbs in it, or, maybe a banana, boom, they blow up. I mean, instantly.
You're 100% right.
Yeah.
Those extremes, that's what I really, you know, if you think about it, you know, it's just how people take an idea and then they just exploit it, and it's like how people in this world are just so extreme, you know, it's really the story of our lives that we all learn this. I mean, I can be a complete, like, you know, nut job, especially about the gym. Like, I mean, like, I'll be a 7-day-a-weeker, knowing better, right? We become extremists, but it's like, I'm not going out and preaching that. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the thing, too, is they miss exercise. You get it. You've been exercising. Me and Heath have been in sports and been in exercising for pretty much a large part, if not almost our entire life. Yep. I mean, from the time I could get out of my crib, I was on the go. You know, and that's another part they have forgotten, that they're now ingesting a large amount of fats, you know, a huge amount of fats, and then they're not exercising, so they're not burning it off, and they think, well, all you got to do is eat fat and you'll be skinny. Well, no, your body's going to store fat as fat because you're not utilizing it, and then you throw in some carbs, and your body explodes because now it's got this super sensitive carb tolerance, and as soon as you throw carbs in, it goes into fat storage hyper mode. And I just feel sorry for some of them who have had, they've had their gallbladder removed. And it's because some have a sluggish gallbladder, because if you've eaten a lot of carbs, as you know, out through your life, your gallbladder is sluggish, and you have to slowly train it in order to be able to effectively produce more bile salts to digest fats. But the extreme other twist end is if you have a super high fat diet, you are taxing that gallbladder all the time. I mean, it's in hyper mode all day long. And what are you going to do? You're going to burn your gallbladder out too. You're going to start having issues with your gallbladder by doing an ultra high fat diet too. And I think there's a lot going on chemically with these people. And instead of going, okay, let me figure this out and let me listen to someone, I don't know, let me call Colette and ask her maybe what I should do. Instead, they just go on the pattern and then they write a book about their failure.
Well, Gary and I are amazed because we're reading what these bloggers are putting out, and they're putting out these high-fat diet and these templates, and no exercise. There's nothing to go with it.
You don't need to exercise.
Don't even mention it.
Not even minimal exercise. Honestly, people could work out like 20 minutes, like 3 times a week, follow a paleo ketogenic diet, and probably get pretty good results. You know, it's like you don't even have to do that much when your diet is on point. You can work out very minimally and get amazing results. I mean, you really don't have to work out that much.
Isn't it crazy?
And don't get me wrong, we don't preach just doing 20 minutes 3 times a week, because the human body was meant to move. You've got to get.
But at least there would be in fat burning mode. It's better than no exercise at all.
Yeah,
these people aren't recommending any exercise. I mean, it's sad. You know,
actually drinking the oil. I had somebody say, "Well, Colette, I was on the keto. I'm drinking. What? Fun." You know what I mean? How does that sound? I mean, but really though, it's excessive, right? So it's one extreme to the other. I'm like, wait a minute. And when you start to break it down, a diet without vegetables does not. It can never settle with me. I just can't, you know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. You know, those are foods of the earth. I mean, how does that not make sense? You know, I couldn't do it. So whenever people started working with me, first off, yes, it's a low carb approach, but it isn't a no carb. You know, it's, like you said, it's the right carbs. It comes down to that. You know, it's
so basic. They've made it so complicated. And now paleo, you know what paleo is? It's going out and eating nothing but red meat all day. I mean, that's what people think, because everyone skews everything.
I know.
And instead, because you know what it does? It sells stuff. Instead of actually telling someone, okay, all you need to do is exercise, eat, lean red meats, because in nature, animals are leaner. We're not fattening them up on antibiotics. 80% of all antibiotics used in this country is on our feedlots, people. Get that one, because it fattens animals up. You know, eat some vegetables, some fruits. Low on fruits because they would be seasonal. They would be hard to find. Nuts. And, obviously your vegetables would be anything that was naturally growing in the plant kingdom. There would be multiple types of vegetables, herbs.
Yeah.
And people look at me and they go, wait, hold on. It's that simple? I don't have to go out and buy 3 cows and slaughter one a week and eat and drink the blood and raw meat. I'm like, where do you get this stuff? And that's what I mean. You get the weirdest things back when people tell you they've done paleo or low carb. It's bizarre.
Anybody that gets up, they were talking about this on like the Today Show, but it's true. If you condition yourself right to eat crappy food, it's like what you're going to crave, right? But when you really, like, people say, oh, Colette, I really, seriously, I'm not trying, I mean, every once in a while, but honestly, I don't feel good. I mean, I don't know if it's because I'm so trained to eat a certain way, or because I got to take a ridiculous amount of insulin. But see, the same amount of insulin would be having to be secreted in your body too. You know, if you, like, say I'm doing a dessert or crappy, just, the other day I went out to eat and it was just something, and I just don't feel good. So I want the reward of feeling good. Yeah. So processed foods, I mean, it just doesn't. I would say, could you find a Cheeto in nature? What do you do with stuff, right? You know what I mean? A cracker? Where does it? I mean, these things are processed. They're just
It's common sense.
It is.
It's just really common sense, because I always give my clients a good example too. I go, what do you feed your dog? Do you have a pet? And they go, yes. I go, do you feed your dog table scraps? Yes. What does your dog look like? Like you, right? Overweight and like a bowling ball, and they have like doggy diabetes. They have a heart, they have vision problems, cloudy cataracts. They age earlier. And I go, you're doing the same thing to your pet that you're doing to you. Go look at your pet, and that is a reflection upon what you're doing to yourself. So you're feeding them this gruel dog, kibble bits that are who knows made from what. Actually was part of the Purina case in the whole thing where all the pets died.
Oh,
I
really?
did that investigation, yeah. And then you're feeding them table scraps on top of it.
Ugh.
What do you expect? And that's the thing. It's that simple. If you put crap into your body that it was never intended to have, you're going to have some bad results.
Yeah.
I mean, how hard is that? And people are still floored.
Oh,
And they'll go to the grocery store and they'll buy the organic Cheetos.
We're fed this though because the FDA has kind of conditioned the food labeling whole wheat. Everybody tells you, whole wheat and have this and 100% whole grain. What does 100% whole grain mean on honey bunches of oats? Yeah. I mean, honey bunches of oats is like.
Well, yeah. How did Cheerios become a health food cereal?
It's amazing though.
Even with the cereal, I mean,
it's so amazing. Even on Instagram, I'll see all these fitness posts. And they're showing a six-pack abs, and one of the things they're saying is eat grain. And I'm like, I have to respond. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. How are you going to have six-pack abs when you're consuming something highly inflammatory? I mean, it's just not going to happen for you.
And it's sugar, and that's another thing that people have gotten confused on too. That a carbohydrate is a sugar. It will be broken down to the same simple sugar, no matter what it is. Complex carb, simple carb, it doesn't matter. In the body, it's going to end up as sugar. Whether it's a whole grain, a 7 grain, it doesn't matter. And don't get me wrong, because there's conflicting data depending on what region of the world you lived in. Sure, you may have had grains or some beans per se implemented into your diet, but those people would have had different enzymes in their digestive system in order to process these foods to dull this sugar dose.
Yeah. And
it's been proven. It's just like they proved that there's people in Japan that have a specific enzyme that lowers the sugar in white rice. As far as when it's broken down, it changes the chemical components of it. So that's a totally different ballgame. But if the average American thinks they're going to cheat that, you're dreaming. You're not going to get away with that.
Well, then, we're an oversized nation, though. So here's what happens to me. They're like, well, Colette, I'm eating brown rice. Well, I will tell you this. I have to take insulin. So I really have to take about the same amount of insulin for a cup of brown rice as I do a cup of white rice. It's just I might see a spike. So if I'm testing my blood sugar right in 90 minutes or 60 minutes, the spike's going to be happening a little bit more, but it's going to be around the same amount of insulin, right? So we just live in a supersized nation. So once you get light of something, wow, I can have brown rice. They're eating like this much of it, right?
Yeah.
Then because what happens with grains and what happens with why I don't eat them. It doesn't matter if it's brown rice, whole wheat pasta, quinoa, bulgur. I don't do it, right? Because I still need to take the insulin for it, but it perpetuates the need to eat more, right? So the more insulin I take, my brain, my neurotransmitters are saying, well, eat more, Colette. Do you see what's happening to me? So then I can't stop. I've been in this situation, and I said, I'm done. That's sort of really transferring over. This was my slow grad. Well, can I have a little brown rice or a little oatmeal? I would do the whole thing and I do oatmeal. I was freaking starving all day. Why am I doing that to myself? I'm like, I take the insulin, I had to take more because and I'm like, I'm done. I'm doing egg whites. I'm doing a protein shake with some kale in it the other day with a little bit of almond butter. I mean, it was amazing.
Can you walk us through like a typical day of what you eat? I think people would be really interested to hear.
Right, and this is someone that lives with type 1 diabetes. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? So this is how it rolls, So I don't do traditional, so I love the paleo wraps, the coconut paleo. So what I'll do is I'll mix up some eggs, some egg whites, I put a ton of vegetables in them. I've actually started getting into dehydrator. How do you guys feel about dehydrating?
Love it. Oh, I've been looking at some really good ones for like a year. I just don't have the space for one right now.
I don't either. I live 550 square feet. I've been dehydrating my zucchini, my summer squash.
Awesome.
I did green beans. So that's because it really does add a little bit of additional flavor. So this is a little crazy, but that's what I threw into my egg whites and I wrapped it in the paleo wrap. Those things are the best.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's breakfast, right? So then,
real quick, why do you do egg whites? Just out of curiosity.
I do whole eggs too. It just depends. Sometimes when I'm getting ready, so what I'll do is I'll cycle my fats a little bit. To be honest with you, so
you're cutting calories to go deficit.
That makes sense.
Because you have to get ripped. I mean,
he's right.
You have to cut your calories.
But I don't feel good when I do that. So I only do that you know what I mean? So like right now I'm kind of tighten up. I might have this guest posing out of October. So I love whole eggs. I'm a whole egg believer from the to the end of time. And in New York, we can buy real grass-fed chicken eggs. So the real deal. We have a Whole Foods right in Union Square where we get grass-fed beef. I get ostrich. I get the elk. I get everything. It's just amazing.
Well, we actually had a show a few episodes ago where we talked about over-consuming the amount of calories more than your metabolism metabolism is burning, it actually gets stored as fat. And so when I do this personally too, if I want to get really lean and cut,
So
and
me,
see,
right?
yeah, I'll cut my calories, but I'll do it in a paleo template, and it works every time, and it's very easy to do. But there's so many people over consuming their way more than their body's burning, and it's an important thing to understand. Is like your body doesn't know what to do with those extra calories. So if you're trying to tighten up and get really shredded, you gotta cut some calories out, but you can still do it and do it being paleo.
Yeah. Well, and that is a perfect example of, people are going to say, oh, that's because you're into physique contests and posing and doing this stuff. And I go, well, not necessarily. You got to take it in context that the human body would go through fasting states, which would be pretty much what you're mimicking, and bodybuilders mimic in what they do. So your guys aren't too far off. And me and Heath come from a little bit of a bodybuilding kind of, we grew up with that genre too. I'm older and I'm in my mid-40s. So I grew up with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I met him when I was a kid, for God's sakes. I mean,
All right.
yeah, I grew up with pumping iron. That's what I grew up with. So that's what our training for sports was based off basic bodybuilding techniques. So yeah, that's interesting. I thought that, because people, I guarantee, were going to jump on that and go, oh, those bodybuilders, that's not paleo.
But what I do, so I wouldn't want to eat like that every day. So I cycle it. I don't know if you do this too, Heath. Like I might do like 2 days where I cut my fats, or I sometimes only do it. I'll pick 3 meals. 3 meals that I'm not having fats at. 3 meals that I'm having fats at. That's what I kind of like to do the most, because it just keeps me more. I feel more.
I like to eat. I don't like to fast. I mean, there's intermittent fasting, which totally works, but I do cycle. Or let's say I went on vacation and I want to get back to like my optimal weight, but I would only fluctuate 5 pounds. But I'll just reduce my calories and still consume a lot of protein and a healthy amount of fat. But there's ways to adjust that total caloric intake for the day, and bam, body's right back where I want it to be.
And see, that's a great example. Me and Heath are different. I use fasting and I don't even call them techniques anymore. It took a while for my body to adapt. It took actually a couple years to kind of figure it all out.
Right.
And now I don't even fast on purpose, to be honest with you. It's one of those deals I go, oh God, I haven't eaten in 18 hours. And I realize because I get busy or I'm focusing on something else, or, I'll go out and I'll ride my bike for 6 hours. Well, I didn't eat before. I didn't eat while I'm riding. And then by the time I get home, I realize it's 10, 12 hours before I've eaten, if not longer. And people freak out and they go, how do you torture yourself like that? I go, I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm just letting nature take over. It's access to food.
There's something positive to that, though, because bowel rest, you understand, is not a bad thing. Think about the monks. Think about the people, these longevity studies where they actually, those ultra low calorie thoughts of process, because the idea of eating could be somewhat, I mean, I think the way we eat is much less toxic to the body, but eating in general is a taxing experience on the body, right? So fasting does. I've been trying to get myself there, like you, Gary, a little bit to just, and this is with diabetes, I got to really test all the time. But I think there's something to it, that you kind of feel, how about this too? There's a clarity in your mind. I don't know if you've, that you start, because you're not focusing on food, because diabetics focus on food all the time, and then as a bodybuilder, you're sitting there thinking. So you start to think a little bit more clearly, and you think you wouldn't have energy, but you do. It's just the most.
It is really weird. I don't actually feel hungry. I don't really feel the desire to eat. I eat because I know I should. But it's weird like that. I don't crave anything. I feel content all the time. I have energy all day. And it's weird because I'm in this kind of ketogenic, I'll go up a little bit if I have like an apple or something, but I'm always going in and out of kind of a ketogenic fashion. My body's constantly burning fat as energy. And I think that's what Gary's describing, is that sometimes he's just not hungry.
Well, and not only that, but you're totally right. There's been studies about, obviously our digestive system takes an enormous amount of energy. Yep. And so when you actually give your digestive system a break and your body a break, what your body does is it actually takes those resources and points them in another direction. And they have found that in cancer studies that people with cancer who actually use fasting techniques and a normal person, is your body goes into scavenger mode, and it actually goes and finds these broken or dysfunctional cells, and it'll actually either repair them or destroy them, depending on whether it can be reconditioned or not. Our bodies are pretty smart. They're a lot smarter than us. And that thought of having common or access to food all the time, in nature you would never have that, and you'd have to eat different things. I mean, heck, you could go a week eating tree bark, you know, if you
Right.
couldn't find anything or roots. I mean, that's
Yep.
just the way it would be. So you would have a completely different nutrient profile for a certain period of time.
Well,
You
Gary,
know,
that's so
who
much
knows?
shit. Well, then don't you? I want to shake people when you just brought about cancer. Okay, what do you think breeds cancer?
Sugar.
Sugar.
Yeah.
I mean, but if we got, I mean, and I think about just as diabetes. I mean, I look at I got, look, 65 million people by 2015, or the statistics are 40% of America is going to have diabetes. Okay, what are we doing here? Somebody's got to shake somebody and get rid of this typical food pyramid or how we feel about carbs and this. I mean, it's just still mind blowing because this is an epidemic. I'm seeing patients at the hospital today. I will tell you that I go to the floors to see all the diabetes patients. It's out of control how many patients are in this hospital that have diabetes, right? So what if we eradicated diabetes? Then I wouldn't be seeing half of the people in the hospital. I'm telling you that.
Yeah. Well, I've told,
heart disease. I mean, come on.
I've told people this because I used to work in this. I mean, I spent almost a decade, you know, and I've been ripped that I have no experience in anything, which I find completely moronic by a comedian. I kid you not, a comedian was calling me out that I had no experience. I worked almost a decade in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the FDA.
Yeah.
But I'm stupid. I don't understand any of this stuff. But I got to see the inside and understanding that the health industry is a $3 trillion, closing in on $3 trillion a year. And when you look at any economic system and the way things work, and I was on the inside, I was in the government a large part of my life, so I understand how this stuff works and how these corporations work and how greed works. There is no way they are going to say go on a healthy diet or paleo works or low carb works, because you're going to literally take hundreds and thousands of billions of dollars out of the economy that these people have to have, and they don't need to have it for survival. It's gotten to pure greed. Yeah. You could literally cut the healthcare industry, you could cut that to 1.5 trillion in 6 months. You could almost obliterate healthcare as we know it today in a year to 18 months. But it's never going to happen because it's not just the United States, it's worldwide. I mean, this is, I consider it almost a mafia. I mean, if you get outside of the scope of this and you start teaching people ways to change their life, the medical industry loses their mind.
No,
I mean, as a food manufacturer, it's so easy to develop products that are low carb. I mean, and there's so many amazing ingredients, and they keep coming out with new ingredients. There's so many fibers and extracts and neat things that are actually good for your body that you can create any sort of food item that you want. We could have a complete array of food items, which many of them I've actually created. But I mean, there's so many more things that could be created to help people transition from a mainstream diet to this way of eating.
I got into coconut flour several years ago. I mean, I see no reason why it's almost like, why would you even use anything else?
Right.
You know, if you look at the profile of coconut flour, amazing, right?
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Yeah. But again, then people start to overdo it again. Then they start eating you'll get coconut muffins 5 times a day, paleo muffins, and
the problem is the honey. We had Dr. Cornade on yesterday talking about the dangers of honey and how basically it's the same as
maple syrup and honey.
Yeah, maple and syrup and honey.
You know,
it's just as damaging. So, but you switch things out with some organic stevia. There's some really great companies doing enzymatically breaking down the stevia leaf to create stevia for us to use that has all the health benefits. And why not use it? It's so available.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. We got off topic there. We got on a tangent.
We did.
We got breakfast out. We got your breakfast. Yes. Let's go back to the diet because I know people really want to hear this.
Right. So if I'm doing like a fat day, what I would call it, where I'd have all my fats in my meals, I would do the whole eggs with the paleo wrap and my dried vegetables or regular, it doesn't matter. And I just make things flavorful though. I want my food to taste good. So call me crazy, but I like to enjoy food. I love cooking, so that's what I do there. Then I always bring nuts with me. Everybody that knows me knows I'm a nut addict, okay? So I completely got off peanuts, and I will tell you this. I never digested them. Yeah. I liked them. I love them, people, but my system, I never felt right eating them. So there you go. So I always felt, even when I'm doing with my competitions with my competitors, I'm like, look, no nuts, no peanut butter. You can do almond butter or cashew or macadamia nut butter. Even I find that works real well. It just seems to digest much better.
It's a legume. Yeah, it's a legume. It's not a part of paleo, so it makes sense why you couldn't digest it.
Yeah, highly inflammatory. Yeah.
Oh, I know, it's not good. It's not good. Then I'm a big, like in the afternoon, remember, I prepare everything, I bring it with me. I love fish. So fish is my big thing because here we have a ton of great fish markets. So I'm a big salmon person. I love Chilean sea bass, which is really the oily. Oh, it's so good though. I cook it.
Making me hungry.
I broil it though, and it's like crispy on the top. And, and I'm a person that really does like the skin. So I don't know how, I
love
just,
fish skin.
isn't it great? People think I'm crazy, but that's like the best part, That is the best part.
Especially if you grill it up and crunch it up a little bit.
With me? Thank you. You're with me.
It's so good.
People think I'm crazy. I flip it over, put it in the broiler. Oh, it's like heaven. It's like a treat, It's like a treat. And then I'm really big on spaghetti squash. I love to make my little spaghetti squash. And then I use the little spirulini for my zucchini. I'm creative. So little spirulini makes my little zucchinis into like pasta. So those are kind of like my vegetable favorites, and then green beans. And then in between that, I do like to make my protein. Like I like something a little sweet. And so I'll do like a protein shake, and I'll put in like either a nut butter. I like to put in vegetables in there too, though. Everybody thinks I'm crazy to put in kale with with almond butter. It doesn't taste bad, right? I'm like, what's wrong with that? I did it right. So I put vanilla, and I like cocoa powder. So I like to do real cocoa powder. For the antioxidants, and I like the flavor, so I'll put a little cocoa powder in there. So it's vanilla. If it's chocolate, I make it more chocolatey. It's just for me, I just like that little breakup in the day of just food. And I love real food, but first, when you're doing this every day, day in and day out, I kind of like that craving of something sweet. Then, but one of my favorites is I'll do the Julian bread, and I'll dip it in the egg, and I make the best French toast ever.
Oh yeah.
Cinnamon on top of it, what I mean? A little stevia. It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
A little tiny bit of coconut oil gives it that little zing, or coconut flakes on it. Oh, off the chain.
Awesome. Well, we're really looking forward to getting your feedback on the new paleo protein bars I sent you. They're exciting. They're sugar-free, so they're great for diabetics, and they have 22 grams of protein per bar. So it's a great way to cheat clean. And so definitely looking forward to getting your feedback on that. And I want to thank you so much for coming on, because I know you have another appointment coming up, and thank you for making time in your busy schedule for us.
Yeah.
I think this will be very informative for a lot of people looking to control their insulin levels and reduce it. I think hopefully it'll be a real eye opener for a lot of people. So
I hope they understand that just because you have type 1 diabetes does not mean you have to follow the typical 88 carb 55% diet. It's not necessary.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Make sure everybody hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all our most recent videos. If you have any questions, email Gary at theprimalshow.com or myself, Heath at theprimalshow.com. And thank you so much, Colette, once again for coming on.
You're just the best.
Wait, one last before we go. Yep. Where can they get a hold of you at, Colette?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I have my website. It's Colette Nelson, so ColetteNelson.com. And then I also have my beauty website, which is colorbycolette.com. So either way, so you can get right through to me right there.
Awesome. And we'll have some links in the description area. You can click right to it. So
let's do that. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. All right.
Bye, guys.